So among the New Year's Eve cards that we had was Kazuto Ioka successfully defending his WBA Flyweight Championship against Kiatniwat, aka Yutanaka Ensa, who incidentally was the WBA interim Flyweight champion. This was one of the WBA Unification fights. They're slowly but surely managing to get some of these done at least, and this was a continuation of basically the series of them that they've managed to start holding in 2016. Hopefully, they manage to finish them before 2017 is over. But Ioka managed to basically become the full WBA champion, the one and only, with a good defense of his title against a young upstart fighter in Yutanaka Ensa, aka Stamp Kiatniwat. Of course, I've mentioned it before. A lot of fighters from Thailand, they'll take on names of basically the fighters that the people that promote them or whatever gym they fight under, or whoever is their major sponsor basically. So it'd be almost akin to a TMT fighter like Badu Jack calling himself like Badu Mayweather Gym or something like that. But in any case, Kainsa was going in to fight Ioka. He actually is only 18 years old. He's a fighter that managed to win the interim WBA title when he was only 17. He wasn't able to break Wilfred Benitez's record because he was 17, I think, and 8 months or something, because I think Wilfred Benitez was like 17 years old and 17 years and 6 months thereabouts. But he managed to win that interim title with two successful defenses over Gregorio Lebron, made him basically the mandatory for Ioka. And of course, the super champion was Juan Francisco Estrada. Estrada moved up to super flyweight recently and vacated that belt. So this fight was for the full title. And Ioka basically showed that experience in a lot of ways counts in boxing. In spite of the fact that Kainsa was primed and looking, like a tough, strong, hungry young fighter on the rise, Ioka managed to turn him back. At first, Ioka came out as he tends to fairly methodically behind the jab. He tends to like to stick the jab, and he'll throw the hook off the jab to the body. In particular, is known for being a vicious body puncher. He knocked several fighters out to the body back in his championship runs at 108 and 105 pounds. And he definitely showed a lot of that power here in this fight versus Kainsa. Kainsa seemed a little bit hesitant early on. I think a lot of it was just due to the fact that he knew that he was fighting an experienced champion with very heavy hands, and he was being very mindful of the type of power that Ioka had, even in that jab. Even though that jab seems to come not necessarily especially quick, it comes very heavy-handed. Everything that Ioka lands with a significant amount of force. And Kiatniwat was fairly hesitant at first until probably the last minute of the first round, where he started to open up a little bit with some of the hooking shots he tends to throw. His style is, somewhat akin to a lot of fighters from Thailand, akin, for instance, to the likes of Tertsako Kijim, a fighter that a lot of people know for fighting Orlando Cito. Like, a lot of hooking type shots, shots that you may normally see in Muay Thai kickboxing, since they throw a lot of elbows and such. But they'll throw like a hooking punch and then follow up with the elbow right behind the actual fist. Mike Tyson was actually known for a little bit of that in his prime. And Kainsa was throwing some of those hooks pretty nicely himself, a couple to the body, a couple to the head, but I didn't quite do enough in the first round for me to give him that round. I thought Ioka pretty much controlled the distance, controlled the pace, controlled it with his jab basically. The second round, however, in spite of the fact that Ioka started off still controlling it, Kainsa came out a little bit more aggressively. He was looking to throw his own hooks to the body and then follow up with shots up to the head as well, which is kind of what Ioka was doing. It's almost like Kainsa would throw shots to the body, Ioka would try to counter Kainsa over the top of those shots to the body and hit Kainsa flush on the chin. But one time, in particular, he made a mistake where Ioka was trying to counter over a Kainsa left hook to the body with a right hand up on Kainsa's head, and Kainsa countered that basically with a right hand to Ioka's like a temple area, dropping Ioka very, very hard. Ioka managed to get up before the 10 count, of course, continued to fight on versus Kiatniwat. And, he was actually fighting pretty well off the back foot. He showed that he has a lot of skills on the back foot, especially. He's used to being a taller fighter than most of his opponents at, 5'5" and change. Yutanaka Ensa is 5'3" and a half. So Ioka still had that height advantage here in this fight, and he was fighting very well off the back foot, even as he was stunned by that shot and having been dropped by it. He finished the round off actually pretty well, in spite of the fact that he was dropped. Kainta wasn't quite able to follow up as well as he may have liked or may have wanted to. He was still throwing power shots after that, but Ioka was thrown with enough power of his own that it kind of put Kainta, back a little bit. It gave him a little bit of pause as to trying to finish Ioka right then and there, because Ioka was still throwing with really heavy shots that could have very easily caught Kainta and dropped him. So the second round went to Kainta. Third round was another pretty even round. Ioka was throwing the jab, working behind it really well as with good body shots. Kainta came at him with a lot of good body shots and a couple of shots up top. He managed to stun Ioka once again with another clean right hand up high on Ioka's head. Was finding a little bit of success with that shot in the third round, as he had in the second round. But Ioka wasn't actually dropped in that round by it, and in spite of the fact that he was momentarily stunned by it, it seemed like he controlled most of the round. But because of the fact that I felt like Kainta did just a little bit more damage in that round overall, I gave the third round to Kainta. In the fourth round, however, is where Ioka really started turning it up. He was turned up the volume a little bit and really started landing with a lot of authority to the body. He was throwing the jab as well, but he was doing a lot of feints where he would throw the jab or he would feint the jab and then hook right into a body shot. And those body shots were clearly starting to wear on Kainta. His own volume dropped by a pretty precipitous amount in both the fourth and the fifth round, and really even the sixth. Ioka was turning up the pressure, turning up the heat on and the leverage on all of his shots, both the jabs, the right hands, and the shots to the body, both the left and the right hands to the body. And he was basically just summarily breaking Kainta down throughout those rounds. Kainta was still landing an occasional shot here and there, but for him it tended to be a bit more in little spurts here and there, and it would be like maybe one or two shots at a time, whereas Ioka would just consistently almost like pot shot him, just catching him with overhand rights as Kainta dropped his guard a little bit, or if there was any low in Kainta's actual activity, Ioka would just boom pot shot him right then and there. He wasn't leaving any openings to chance. He was taking every opportunity he could to accumulate the damage on Kainta, and it really just was a matter of time before he managed to completely break him down, which wound up happening in the seventh round. He dropped Kainta with a brutal body shot, a nasty left hand right on the liver. Kainta went down just in sheer agony. He did manage to get up, make the 10 count, and he continued to fight on, but you could tell that he was still, he got like some of the wind knocked out of him. Ioka went right back to the body. It's like he mixed up a couple shots to the head too, so that he could get Kainta's body just that much more open, and he hit him with two nasty shots. One right, another left hook right on the liver, and then a right hand that looked like it landed like right on the solar plexus. So that pretty much completely took the steam out of Kainta's sails. Dropped him once again. Ioka actually even managed to land a right hand up on Kainta's face as Kainta went down. Basically just keeling over in the pain. He actually wound up making the count as well again, but it's almost like as soon as he made the count that the referee was giving him, he was almost like bending back, and the ref was beckoning him to hand him his gloves so he could wipe his gloves off of it on his shirt. Kainta was pretty much just about to like bend over, like keel over again, and the ref is like, all right, yeah, you've had enough. He called it right then and there, and I wound up being a 7th round TKO for Kazuto Ioka. Really good win. Solid win over a fresh young contender on the rise. A guy that was an interim champion, was trying to become a full champion, and it just wasn't meant to be for him. But he's still a young fighter, 18 years old. We may soon see him again in the future, and he proved that he definitely had a little bit of power in spite of the fact that he's only has 6 knockouts and 15 wins. Managed to drop the champion in Ioka, but I have mentioned before in the past that Ioka at 112 pounds isn't necessarily the physical force, the physical phenom that he was at 105 and 108. Even if 112 may be a bit more of like a natural like walk around ish weight for him, much easier to make than 108 for instance. But he still pulled through, showed the class and the skills, the technical ability that a veteran such as himself would have. 27 years old now. He was once in Kainta's shoes, of course. He won his first world title in his 7th fight, if I'm remembering correctly, and he he continued to become a 3-weight champion, which he is, of course, right now, turning back Kainsa. And Kainsa, may one day we may see him in the future as a champion, either at flyweight, super flyweight, maybe if he moves up. He's only 18, so he hasn't finished growing, probably hasn't quite even gotten his man strength under him, so to speak. So it'll be interesting to see how he does in the future. If he turns out to be, top young fighter, top great flyweight or bantamweight in the future himself. But as for Ioka, he took out the top contender for his belt basically, and now flyweight division is fairly open. Although he is the longest reigning champion, I think he really rightfully should be considered the #1 fighter in the division now that Gonzalez and Estrada are both gone. They both moved up to super flyweight. I'd say Jonriel Casimero can definitely rival him in that regard, though, considering the fact that Casimero did manage to beat the only man to give Ioka his loss. I'm not wrong, although it took him 2 tries in order to do it. The first fight, Casimero didn't even do as good as Ioka did, compared to, in his fight with Ron in comparison to Ioka. But you also have the likes of McWilliams Arroyo still out there. I wouldn't mind seeing a fight between him and Ioka, or Brian Valoria. That would be a fantastic fight. Zhou Shiming is likely to fight his mandatory Dani Nietes next. Ioka versus the winner, especially if it was Zhou Shiming, would be a mega fight basically in Asia between Japan and China. That's a historic rivalry, and it would be a big money fight between 2 big money makers, 2 guys that bring home hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to the flyweight division basically. Then of course the WBC was recently vacated by Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. Now Nawapan Porchakchai, aka what was his name? Nawapan Kaikana, is going to be fighting Juan Churritos Hernandez for the vacant title fairly soon. And for the IBF, like I mentioned before, Jonriel Casimero is the champion there. So I'm not sure if Ioka has unifications on his mind at all, but a fight between himself and Zhou Shiming or Dani Nietes, as mentioned before, would be a fantastic money fight. Otherwise, the likes of Francisco Rodriguez Jr. would be a good fight, good style matchup, or the likes of the guys that I mentioned, Arroyo, Brian Valoria, Morty Mtalane from South Africa, another good fighter that I wouldn't mind necessarily seeing him fight, or even Gregorio Lebron, the fighter that Kainsa managed to win the interim title against. It was a vacant interim title that they fought over. Kainsa managed to edge LeBron, but as you may have known from the video that I did on both of those fights, I actually thought LeBron probably should have won the first fight, and even the rematch, I thought he potentially could have edged it if, but it was more of a drawish type fight at least. It was a closer fight in the second fight than it was in the first. But otherwise, Ioka is pretty much reigns at the top of the division. The flyweight division, it lacks some of the name power that it had with Gonzalez and Estrada now gone. But Ioka definitely still lies there as the top fighter, the biggest name fighter, the biggest money fighter at the moment. Although Zhou Shiming may have a little something to say about that. Who knows? I'm not exactly sure about exactly who might be making more at the moment. But for Ioka, he's always going to be a fun fighter to watch. Good, very skilled, technically skilled fighter, and just a vicious body puncher, especially. So that's pretty much my overall thoughts on the fight, and incidentally, the flyweight division as a whole. I do think that Ioka has a number of good options out there for him in the near future, but I don't necessarily see anybody outside of the elite names, the champions, for instance, being able to dethrone him. At the moment, Ioka kind of reigns as one of the more skilled fighters in the division, or even that's recently gone through the division, even if he lacks some of the overall physicality and just the domineering, destructive force that he had as a strawweight and as a light flyweight. But just a solid champion, and definitely a kind of a banner fighter for the flyweight division, really. So he's living up to it, and I hope you guys enjoy the fight. I will put it in the description, so go ahead, click on it, check it out. Fun 7 rounds of action, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.